Welcome to the Cowpark Bros podcast. I'm your host, Terrence, and with me is my co-host, Jason, calling in for the Batcave in Indianapolis. Jason, are you my good man?
Hey, man, I'm doing really well. Third week in a row is an excellent Tuesday. And, bro, episode 52. Can you believe it? 52. We made it, bro. We made it. Hey, man, ready to get into it. Got three great topics covering three different tenets, or two different tenets of our core, at least. Let's get into it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for listening. As Jason stated, this is episode 52 of the show. For the uninitiated, Cowpark Bros is the podcast to hear. We have weekly podcasts of fans of sports, current events, and entertainment.
And as always, we're your hosts, Terrence and Jason. And every single Thursday, we release a brand new episode where we discuss the current events of the day, sports, and the athletes we love.
And even a few athletes we loathe. No matter the topic, you can expect a brutally honest and fun exchange of snark while learning through the lens of our 30 years of friendship that originated in Calumet Park, Illinois.
Folks, for more Cowpark Bros content, make sure you connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok under the handle Cowpark Bros or Cowpark Bros Podcast for more behind the scenes of the show and just to engage with us every single day. But do not forget that the Cowpark Bros Podcast is available to listen and subscribe for free wherever you and everybody in that household right now listen to podcasts.
Like us, love us, share us, follow us. And folks, if you like us, hell, why wouldn't you?
And like Terrence said, folks, we are the podcast to hear and watch. So make sure you're living it, loving it, and doing it.
Yes, sir. All right. So as Jason and I are going to kick off tonight's show, I am kicking back and relaxing a little bit after a very long work day. And I'm actually tuning into this first NBA play-in game, so which is incredibly relevant because the first segment we wanted to cover on the show was the National Basketball Association playoffs. And Jason, we haven't talked NBA in a while because, frankly, the Bulls haven't been that good. They kind of backed into the playoffs. You're muted.
I'm not going to say they backed into the playoffs, but yeah, they're there. And that really, that's all that matters. It's all about progression, man. Where were they at last year and year before that? That's all it's about, man. Progression. They're there. And you know what? They're facing a tough team. You never know. It's sports. You never know.
Oh, we know. They're about to get fucking destroyed.
Well, again, that's see, that's the Cub fan in you. I try to be defeatist. You know, yes, I realize that Milwaukee's the tough team, but guess what? It's still sports, and you never know. Again, you can be defeatist if you want to. I'm just saying.
I mean, name the last defending champion that lost as a 1 or a 2 seed in the first round.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, that
doesn't matter because
you're saying I'm being defeatist. I think you're being delusional now.
Have you heard me say the Bulls are going to win?
You're basically saying that it's that the last 40 days of NBA tape is irrelevant when it's abundantly clear that the rest of the league figured out. They figured out how to beat Chicago. That's what it boiled down to.
Okay, great. All I said was you never know. That's all I said. I haven't made any official predictions about anything yet. I just said you never know because it's sports. Is that incorrect of me to say? No, because everything I just said is correct. You never know because it's sports. Both those statements are true. Thank you.
So, speaking of the play-in tournament, the play-in tournament, first off, play-in tournament is a wonderful idea. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it after the first time they had the play-in tournament was the bubble year, right? Jason, correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, I don't believe that's correct, but
okay. So when did they have the play-in tournament?
I thought it was this past season. I mean, not this past season, the last season was the first year.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah. So, but I think because it was a shortened year, perhaps they wanted to do something a little different. So basically, the way the play-in format works is that you're going to have the 7th seed and the 8th seed have 2 chances to play a play-in game to advance to the next round. And then the 9th and the 10th seed need to win 2 consecutive games to get in, basically.
Correct.
So I think for if you're not in the top, if you're not in the top of either conference, it's great for the middling teams because all those complaints about, oh man, if we just would have had one more game, it's like, well, you had one more game, you lost, get over it.
Well, going into the whole sentiment you brought up a minute ago about the Bulls and basically saying we already know it's over, basically. I look at the play-in tournament in general as not a good idea. Yeah, it's going to make money because all these other teams are now still involved when it comes to trying to make the playoffs and obviously he's playing games themselves. But ultimately, like you said, looking at these teams here, you got the 10 seed Charlotte Hornets on one side and the San Antonio Spurs, who had a losing record, by the way, 14 games under 500. So they somehow get lucky and get into the actual playoffs and want to play in the Phoenix Suns, the best team in the NBA right now, by the way. If I'm not mistaken, the only team to win 60 plus games this year on either conference. So that's why I feel like the play-in tournament is really not a good idea. Because now, essentially, with 20 teams combined from both sides, you have more than half of the NBA is now making the playoffs. Even though I'm counting the play-in as part of the playoffs because it really is. It's playoff style. So now you have more than half the league making the playoffs. That's like why, you know. Besides money, as we always have nods about sports on past subjects and past episodes, it's not really always about money. But competitively, it's a horrible idea. But
When
now
you
that it's
say
here, because that money it ain't going anywhere.
so, when you say competition, and I'm paying close attention to this Cleveland Brooklyn game. I mean, objectively, I think Brooklyn's a better team, and I think Brooklyn's going to pull it off. Just because it helps when you got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. My God, um, why do you say that it's bad for competition?
Dude, I just told you. I don't know if you were listening.
No, I was listening. You said that half of the league basically.
More than half.
Okay, let's not split hairs here. But
That's not splitting
why?
hairs. When 2/3 of the league are not in the playoffs, did that not sound like a stupid competitive idea? Because now,
I mean,
like I just said, there's a team that's 14 games under 500 with a shot to get into the actual playoffs. In what realm of any other sports does that make sense to you that team is playing for the chance to win a championship? Yes, I don't think they will, but the fact that they're even in the tournament in the first place, and they're not the only ones with a losing record, by the way. Just putting it out there, but I just put them because they're the 10th seed in the West.
I mean, I would feel probably a little differently if I don't know. You have other sports leagues that happen to have playoff structures where you can get in if you're 500 or less than 500. NFL squads have made it into the playoffs 7-9.
Okay,
Um,
but the difference here is normally in those situations you're not getting some type of extra opportunity to get in the playoffs. It just so happens they might have won their division and got in. These teams who are seventh, eighth, ninth, or 10th in either conference. I mean, granted, the teams in the East all had winning records in this, but obviously they're nowhere near the top of the conference, which is why they're playing in this play-in tournament. So, but again, those are reasons why I'm saying that competitively, it's a horrible idea.
yeah, see, I don't know if I agree with that.
Of course,
Um, just because there's been years when parity has been in the National Basketball Association where, for example, the fourth seed in the East, for example, wouldn't even have been the ninth seed in the West. I remember there was one year in the Western Conference, probably in the last 10 or 12 years, where you literally needed to win 50 plus games to even be in the top six in the West. That's how good the West was one of those years. And so when we're making a decision or making a judgment on whether or not it's not good for competitive balance, it's like, well, if it's happening in both conferences, I don't feel like it's bad for competition
because you're
because at
looking
the
at
end of the
the
day, now if the National Basketball Association was a winner take all deal like the NFL, I can see where you were going with that because then that's when you're rooting for chaos. Like all sorts of crazy shit can happen. But it don't get me wrong, this is about the money. NBA owners are not trying to give up any games, and they kind of stumbled onto this success by having the play-in deal. But yeah, it I think it's good for competition because you're you got a squad like Brooklyn who barely got in. It's basically the wild card. It's the NBA equivalent of
no,
wild card weekend.
no, it isn't. It is not. No, it is not. Do not compare this to the NFL playoffs because it's not the same thing at all. Stop it.
What makes it different?
I just
Other
told
than
you five several
you,
reasons as
you
why.
you you keep telling me that it's different and I shouldn't compare it, but I've done it. I would love to hear why it's not the same, other than the fact that obviously you can't play 3 to 5 games
As
in
I've
football
just
like
said,
that.
you mentioned the part about teams got in who were 7-9 because again they won their division, so they actually, in some way, shape, or form, actually earned their way into the playoffs because they
In
were the
some
best.
cases, those teams didn't win their division, though.
Prove it during
Hmm?
this conversation. Pull it up and prove it because I don't believe that.
I'm not pulling it up. I'm saying it's possible. It has happened, um, and that's not a requirement that you have to be at least 500 for any playoff structure.
I get that, but what I'm saying is these teams are getting an extra chance to get in the playoffs. That's my whole point. And even those situations where somebody might have been, less than 500 and got in, guess what? That's under the normal structure of their playoff system. They just happen to have, they were 7-9 or whatever the hell it was. They just happen to have the best record of the teams eligible to make the playoffs in that system. These teams are not one of the best 8 in each conference. They just happen to get an extra shot to get in because, like we just talked about, money. So competitively, it is not the same. These teams again are getting extra chance to fight and play and get in, whereas the teams that we're talking about 7-9 in the NFL are already in the playoffs because they earned it to get in.
I mean, it's such a weird uh, assessment to me to be like, oh, well, these teams actually earned it. I mean, it's all manufactured. At some point there was no concept of a playing tournament. Hell, at some point there was also no concept of a 7 game series. And at one point the first round was a best of 5. Now it's a best of 7. And so these things evolve over time, and you know,
Okay, we're not talking about evolution. All I'm talking about it's a horrible for competition. It's just a horrible idea. Again, it is what it is. So we can move forward and talk about something else when it comes to this. But I'm just saying, it is what it is.
so and this is also interesting too because you haven't watched a lot of NBA this year. Neither have I. I mean, but I think I've watched a little bit more than you have, probably in the aggregate, the last 4 months. Would you agree with that?
Are we playing the basketball watching Olympics now?
God no, God no, because I still think I'm right, and so do you. So it's fine. But what I'm asking is, knowing knowing the split for the playing schedule, and knowing you really don't give a damn about any of those games anyway, what knowing that you actually do know who the top seeds are in the East and the West, who do you think's going to win this whole damn thing?
At some point, I figured you were going to ask that, sir. Uh, just so people are aware, I'm sure if you're listening to this segment, you probably are. But basically, the Phoenix Suns are number one in the West. Miami is number one in the East. And of course, conversation has to start there. Do we think the number ones are going to play each other in the finals? My thought is no. I didn't think about it to look this up, but I don't know when the last time it actually happened with both number one seeds actually made it to the playoff to the finals rather. But something about Miami just doesn't strike me as, oh, that's a championship winning team. I know they're in the finals in the bubble. I know that, but I don't see them making it. I do see Phoenix getting there. I think Phoenix, the fact that again they're the only team to win 60 games, this season. I think that says a lot. And they did a lot of this stuff with Chris Paul hurt.
That is impressive because a lot of people are ready to say, man, Phoenix was done when Chris Paul was out.
Mm-hmm.
Them winning 64 games with a Hall of Fame point guard on basically on riddled on the bench. It's impressive.
Now I will say Memphis, who won 56 games, they did that with Ja Morant not playing a lot of games too. So no one to slight them. I don't know what his status is when it comes to how healthy he is when it comes to percentage wise. But part of that also is kind of why I had to pick Phoenix. Now, of course, with Golden State sitting out there, obviously their championship winning, pedigree clearly on that team, so you really can't count them out. And actually, in actuality, if you look at all the teams actually in the Western Conference playoffs, the only team in there on the West with a championship pedigree is Golden State. None of these other teams have that pedigree there. I mean, I know Greg Popovich, with the Spurs, I know you have that, but as far as the players, none of them have been there. So I think it's going to wind up with Phoenix and Golden State in the Western Conference Finals. In the East, yes, I'll go ahead and say it, Terrence. I think it's going to be the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Somehow, call me crazy, but somehow I think Philadelphia is going to squeak by and somehow get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Before I go any further, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm just looking at the brackets right now. And if I will agree, I don't think Miami is going to make it to the finals. It is kind of messed up that Miami made it that one year in the bubble. And of course, people have decided that the bubble year doesn't count on some level. I think that's really just about discounting what LeBron James has accomplished.
Well, there's also
But
people who like to, shortchange the '99 Spurs for winning championship that year in that shortened season. It's kind
a
of
strike shortened season, yeah. I've already made peace with that year. It's all good. No, I think I'm Milwaukee. Look, if you look at the difference between the top 3 seeds in the East, Milwaukee was the 3 seed. Miami only won 2 games more. Miami only won 2 games more. So there isn't a lot of variance between how they finish. I mean, hell, Boston 2 seed. I'm really impressed with Boston right now. So, and Boston versus Brooklyn in the technically the first round that's going to be a great matchup. I hope that's a great series. But yeah, I think based off, it's most likely going to be Milwaukee in the finals, probably going up against. Well, let me look how the standings would go, because you'd have, if Miami ends up beating either Atlanta or Charlotte, if I'm looking at this, because the 1 seed is going to play the 8th seed, and they beat whoever wins the 4 and the 5. So Miami would probably play. I think Philly's going to win against Toronto, and then Milwaukee is going to beat Chicago, but they play either Boston or Brooklyn. If either Milwaukee versus Boston, man, that's going to be a great series. I think it's going to end up being Milwaukee against Miami. And so I'm really inclined to believe Milwaukee is going to come out of the East. I'm not going against Greek Freak and company because he's at the height of his powers, man. Like, unless there's some crazy injury where he's not at optimal performance or somebody else gets hurt on that squad, I'm not going against these guys. So I'd probably say Milwaukee's coming out of the East. and Phoenix is coming out of the West.
So I do agree with your Eastern champion with being Milwaukee. One thing I do want to point out, you mentioned Miami obviously with 53 wins, and then Milwaukee with 51. Boston also had 51, as well as Philadelphia. They're all three of those teams had the same record. So, but as far as the Western side, Phoenix had a great year. Obviously, like I mentioned now for the third time, best record by far in the NBA, and they were in the finals last year. However, as I just mentioned also earlier as well, there is one team in the Western Conference that has that championship pedigree, and they have their original big three intact. And I say the original big three is when they won their first championship. So, with that being said, I think this year's finals are going to be Milwaukee versus Golden State. Now, as far as who I think is going to win that, I think Milwaukee's going back to back. That's my prediction.
Either way, we win. These are just projections, but I'd be okay with either one of those matchups. I got to be honest.
Well, for personal reasons, I'll prefer Milwaukee win over Golden State, but obviously, I'm not paying anybody to win or not losing any money on it or nothing. So that's my hope. But I do think Milwaukee's going to win. Taking my hope out of it, I think Milwaukee's going to win.
Yeah. So if hypothetically Golden State wins, that would be the fourth title for these guys.
Correct. You're saying that to say what?
It would be a great redemption story for Klay Thompson because if Klay Thompson doesn't get hurt in the Toronto series, perhaps that plays out differently.
And they'll be going for their fifth championship.
Or they just lose and we just got to take the L. There's no telling. There's so much. You need so much to go right in a championship run.
No, you're right.
I mean, nobody was hurt when the Cavs beat them. Nobody was hurt.
This is true.
So
they just had LeBron James. Well, excuse me. They had Kyrie Irving. Excuse me. The Cavaliers did. Sorry. Yeah.
They had Kyrie Irving, and they also had. Listen, there weren't injuries, but there was stupidity. I know Draymond Green kicks himself every time he sees a replay of that 2016 series.
As opposed to the rest of his career that's been so fantastic to this point?
I think it's been pretty fantastic, other than that moment where he got tossed. And then I don't even know if he got tossed. He just got suspended that one game. So.
Well, tell him to start kicking people in the nuts.
Jeez. Well, that concludes our NBA playoff review. And we will look with the upcoming slate of games with great interest. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the fallout yet again from the Will Smith debacle. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros.